find ourselves that the word incest is very powerful, it's very intimidating, and it's very crushing. But I'm talking about incest in the form of emotional, where emotions tie together illegitimately, wrong bonding, forming relationships that aren't supposed to be the way that they form. A child, most people would know, is not invited into the place where adults belong. And this is something that covert emotional incest will do. It forms before outsiders come into the family. It forms within the family dynamic due to some dysfunction somewhere between the two adults, or one adult leaving, or maybe one adult even passing away. There's many different dynamics in which covert emotional incest works. Now I've got a bit of camera trouble here, hang on. Let's try that. Covert emotional incest forms long before you come along. It could be out of resentments towards the husband. It could be out of rejection of the wife. The husband turns to the daughter for some form of feminine response or input, which causes a wrong bonding between the father and the daughter. There's a hypersensitivity towards protecting one or the other, usually the father, who presents himself to be the victim and therefore needs the daughter's protection. With the mother, it could be that the father has rejected the mother and that the mother now needs the son as a surrogate partner for her supply, emotional masculinity supply. Covert emotional incest will usually work itself in a way in which, to convenience a need in the adult, a desperate need that needs to be met by an adult, but the adult has chosen to meet that need via the child. I'm having camera problems here. Via the child. Now, these people don't realize the damage that they're doing to these children because it's not a child's place. They haven't had the life experience, the emotional formation to understand what transmissions are taking place between the adult and the child. And as these enmeshments grow and form over time, if somebody from the outside comes in as a replacement for the broken down relationship, be it a woman to the father or a man to the mother, the child, who has been now the protector and the supplier, emotional supplier, will often go into a dysfunction. They'll overprotect the adult. I've seen this happen with sons and their mothers. There can be nothing wrong, but they'll make up something, they'll find something to cause trouble between the new partner and the parent. You see it, even Hollywood knows this because you see it in Hollywood. Now, covert emotional incest, read the word covert, has a way of camouflaging itself. But if you know what it is, it's very easy to spot. One will be in charge and the other one will be the servant. Usually in the case of mother-son, the son will set himself up as the authority and the mother will become subject to the son. But those roles can reverse depending on the mood of the mother and the state of the mother. If the mother finds a partner and that partner is going to be brought into the presence of the son, initially, in most cases, the mother will ask for order, not realizing that she's caused a formation in the son. This can work father to daughter, but my experience is with mother and son. She's caused a authoritative formation in the son, where she's given the son an authority over her in an emotional, accessible way. So when the child or the son can be a young man, they usually struggle with their girlfriends because they're too attached to their mother, if they've got a girlfriend. You'll find that the son will become protective of the mother, even if there's nothing to protect. It's treacherous, it's diabolical, and it's relentless. They will not stop interfering in persuading the parent against a new partner. You'll find that if you reverse it and the mother doesn't like the new girlfriend, say in the instance of a son, they will do everything they can, as subtly as possible, to disrupt that relationship with an undermining in mind, because they want the full supply. They want the full emotional supply. They don't want or like the thought that somebody else, an outsider, is getting any emotional supply from the son or the mother. And what happens is these people will find partners and everything will go smooth at the start, and then covert emotional incest will start to manifest. One of the two will start to break down, and it's usually the one that is watching the other who has outsourced their supply, emotional supply. In the case of a son, it would be the girlfriend. In case of the mother, it would be the boyfriend. And you'll find bizarre and unnatural causes of conflict. I've seen young men fret and whine and whinge over the mother having an emotional source outside of themselves. I've watched the mother trouble trying to work out how she's going to fix it. You'll see these parents don't even realize what they've done. And the next thing, this apparently perfectly peaceful and happy young adult child all of a sudden becomes this terrible, horrible little monster that could be likened to a teenager, spoiled teenager. It starts off, as I said, camouflaged, but as the emotional outsourcing of supply comes in, the one of the two, it could be the mother or the son, depending who's got the partner. Let's say the mother's got a partner. I've seen these young adult men deteriorate into spoiled little children that relentlessly will not stop attacking the relationship or partnership until one or the other gives in. In two relationships I have, the son's deteriorated, or there's been three, but let's just say the two bad ones. The son had deteriorated to the point where the verbal and undermining coercion behind the partner's back became so severe that the mother shifted her hypergamy across to the child. Now, this is something that I've never heard anybody talk about, but I've seen this twice. Now, hypergamy in a woman is when she's looking for a better partner. It's just a natural, women are always scouting around at possibilities, even if they're in a relationship. But when you watch a woman's hypergamy due to covert incest shift to the child through the maternal channel, hypergamy now is joined with the maternal channel to reach this child. The hypergamy now has chosen the child. This is, I don't even know what you call this, but you'll see the woman looking at the child as though it's a surrogate partner. And you'll see the child looking at the mother as though they're in a relationship, not a maternal relationship, but a illegitimate, wrongly bonded emotional relationship that's gone past the maternal level into an incestual emotional level. Now, just let me show you something that might help you to understand this. The Bible teaches that when you worship a God, whatever it's the Jewish God, you are to worship no other God but Him. Otherwise, it's spiritual adultery. You can't worship two gods at once. You can't be in a relationship with two gods at once. Otherwise, it's spiritual adultery. Okay? It's the same with covert emotional incest. When the parent or the child go past the maternal bond into a relationship that ought only be with two adults in a monogamous relationship, then you're dealing with covert emotional incest. Now, this happens to women that are married to these men that are still bonded to their mother. I mean, there's nothing uglier than watching a man who is bonded with his mother like he's still 10 years old. Now, I know women that have been married to men like this and realize that you'll sense something is wrong. You'll sense that something just isn't right. You'll feel like you're on the outside. You'll feel like you're being pushed to the side. Nothing's being said. This is happening in the emotional realm. Your head will start to swim. You'll see these people moving to the side and subtly isolating you from their conversation. You'll see these people spending time together when it should be spending time with you. This is how covert emotional incest works. That's why it's covert. It's constantly hiding itself while supplying itself from the partners of these people. What you'll find is in the woman's case, it's a lot of women are like this now, single mothers. They'll get a man, they'll use him for his masculinity to meet their intimate needs, but then emotionally they'll live out their lives with their sons, or be it a father, their daughters, or whoever they've got this bond with. So the partner's spending themselves intimately and investing themselves intimately into this person, but emotionally the person's spending themselves with the covert emotional incest bonds that they have. They're not reinvesting. They're taking, but not reinvesting. It's a dead end. Covert emotional incest will leave you standing like you're feeling like you've come to a dead end. But it's not supposed to be a dead end. You're supposed to be progressing and moving forward, but covert emotional incest won't allow that to happen. And if you're not aware of it, you become depressed. You become anxious. You start to turn on yourself, wondering, what have I done wrong? What can I do better? It has nothing to do with you. these formations, these emotional formations, the covert emotional incestual formations, are formed inside that family before you come along. And if you don't or know about this or are able to identify this, you will live your loyal excuse me, your loyalty and faithfulness will blind you just enough for you to try and tolerate or find a way of tolerating this kind of thing. It's stifling. You feel like you're being smothered. The other person won't listen because they don't know themselves. There's not many people that realize covert emotional incest is one of the great Western world problems, and other cultures as well. You have no right to invest that part of yourself except in a illegitimate relationship with your partner. So covert emotional incest is running rampant at the moment with all these single mothers and single fathers, and they're all crying out for some kind of supply. But it becomes a big entanglement of dysfunction. Usually the single mothers end up on their own because they'll be sabotaged by the child. And I'm talking about adults. A lot of the time the child will end up on its own because the mother won't accept the partner, and the mother's got the last say or the father's got the last say. It's relentless, it's vicious, it's calculated, it's cunning, and it doesn't stop. I'll give you one example. Excuse me. I'll give you one example and then I'll close. I can remember going out with a wife of mine. She was very attached to her son. Good boy. I mean, these aren't bad people. These people are just found themselves in a situation where they've formed relationships with their children out of the desperate need to have some kind of supply. We went out for the day in Sydney to visit some sites and things. It was a lovely day. We sat down to have lunch in a little restaurant. It was lovely. Everything was going fine. And there was a beautiful picture behind us, and I said, let's take a picture of each other in front of this picture of this beautiful bird. It was a bird. And as we were about to take the picture, she stopped and paused, and she said to me, I don't think we should take this picture. And I looked at her and I said, why don't you think we should take this picture? This is, and your head starts to swim. She goes, because my son will see it and he'll feel left out. And sorry for coughing. He'll feel left out. And I looked, and you know, I felt like standing up and just walking off, because where we were and what we were doing absolutely had nothing to do whatsoever with anybody else except ourselves. Yet in the back of this woman's mind, she was frightened of the emotional reaction, the negative emotional reaction that the son would have if he saw me and her sitting there together on a day out. And the influence of that was so strong that she hesitated to take a picture of each other, and we were married. Now, can you comprehend how that must have felt for me? I'm a reasonable, pretty broad-minded thinking style of a man. I'll let things stretch. There's no problem with that. I don't, I'm not. But that was a turning point for me, a red flag in that marriage. Because the bond that she created with that son out of the unhappiness of her previous marriage had now spilled over into my relationship with this woman because it was preformed. It doesn't matter how good you are, how well you perform. If you covert emotional incest will jump out at you, you won't know it's even there until it's too late. And then you're dealing with this horrid monstrosity that works against you through the person that you've created a relationship with, that's sharing that emotional content that should be meant for you as the partner with a child, be young or adult. And it's unbreakable, and you will pay. Can you imagine a woman, a grown woman, 47, 48-year-old saying, we should not take this picture together because my son will be upset if he sees us having a good time. If that isn't a red flag, or we're going to end up in trouble, then I don't know what is. I'll tell you the rest of this story. We jump forward a few years, and the son was living with his father. He was having trouble with the father's new wife, of course. That's how these people work. They got no understanding whatsoever of adult needs. We get word that the son needs to move in with us. I stood on the veranda at home and I looked across to the mountains, and something inside me just said, this isn't going to go good. This is going to triangulate. Because it was going to be the big reunion of the mother with the son, and there's a lot more to this story, and I'm not trying to undermine these people, but this is how covert emotional incest works. So we sit down and we have the talk with this guy, and this is what you'll do and not do. Otherwise, you'll be asked to leave. Same thing with my children. Oh yes, no worries, blah, blah, blah. He moves in. Lazy. I cannot stand laziness and all its forms of destructiveness that come with it, and how it ripples through everything and upsets everything. This poor woman, and I will say poor woman because she had 2 major operations while this was going on, ended up having 2 husbands. It was like he was a second husband, and felt entitled to that. And I'm watching this and I said to her, look, you're not going to be able to sustain this. You've got 2 husbands. And she took offense to that. But it was true. Within 10 weeks, her hypergamy had shifted to the son. She didn't have 2 husbands anymore. She had 1 husband, but it wasn't me. It was the son. I remember coming home one day, and they didn't even hear me coming up the stairs, and they were talking in depth about our financial business, and I said, you shouldn't do that. And I almost asked them to leave then. The marriage lasted 10 weeks after he moved in, and it got so bad I asked both of them to leave. And I cannot explain to you in words how bad the behavior got. And it was all a result of this one young man's laziness and selfishness. Covert emotional incest, once it gets inside your four walls of your house or your mind, if you don't deal with it quick, it'll stomp on you and stamp on you and demoralize you in ways that you cannot imagine. That's the power of covert emotional incest. Well, I'll get off this now. Thank you for watching, but you need to be aware of covert emotional incest. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Bye for now.